So thank you so much for the introduction. It's been super interesting listening to everyone today. I'm going to speak a little bit about some slightly different interactions with dust, not quite from an architectural perspective, but from an artistic perspective. Um, so I've got a text that I'm just going to read. I'm going to share one image and then play a video, which I'm going to speak over for a little while. And this should be my full 10 minutes. So I'm just going to start with sharing an image quickly. Okay. So you've got an image of your screen of a roller coaster that's not moving. Right. Part of what I share here today are fragments, provocations, and thoughts towards a consideration for coming to terms with exhaustion, new forms of working in the gig economy, and striving towards new forms of collective thinking and working. I add to this also some thoughts on contemporary surveillance. In thinking about the invitation, Dialogues with Dust, I've been thinking about two particular experiences with dust, two physical ones that make up the work that I'm going to show. The first experience with dust relates to the image that you see on your screen. In 2013, I was lucky enough to visit Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi. And at that point, having been making work and thinking about and writing about the manufactured spaces of amusement parks and roller coasters, I was absolutely thrilled. Hang on one second. Okay. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay. Okay. To experience the Formula Rossa, the fastest roller coaster in the world that propels the rider at a speed of 234 kilometers per hour. But there was dust on the track. And so for a full 8 hours on that day, I committed to waiting, watching as this feat of engineering did not move. And all I could think was, well, of course, we're in a fucking desert. What did they think was going to happen? And so my dream of sitting on the fastest roller coaster in the world was shattered by dust. My second significant experience, and here I'm going to ask Zahir to play the video. My second experience with dust is somewhat of a more relentless kind of dust, a digital kind that cuts my attention and kills my focus. This is futile. I no longer start emails these days with, sorry for the delayed response. Instead, I start emails with, I hope this finds you well in strange and uncertain times. That's a joke, I don't really. The video clip that is playing is called This is Futile. And the futility to which I refer is, on the one hand, the futility of contemporary aspirations. We are watching so-called normality crumble around us as we scramble to keep up with our work, to keep thinking, to keep working, to keep producing. There is the futile exercise of keeping up with trends, movements, and the future projections we are subject to each day. There is the futility of keeping up with the news. Yesterday, I read a cartoon with the line, are you talking about the new normal from an hour ago? Or is there a new normal as of right now? I can fully imagine that today we are in the post-new normal. This work was made during a 1-month residency in Madagascar last year. Being in Antananarivo for that month was incredibly difficult. It tested me physically, emotionally, and pushed me to my limits, testing my capacity for change, for difference, and my ability to adapt. I thought I had a pretty good and wide-ranging sense of adventure and capacity for change, but I clearly didn't. I started to think a lot about physical dust during my time there because the pollution made it hard to breathe. I walked around each day with a scarf covering my face while locals looked at me with curiosity. But I also came to realize how much of this digital, social media, and virtual dust I was collecting. In a moment of panic, when I realized that I was struggling to actually make and produce new work before the opening of my show, I began looking through the notes on my phone, only to discover how much of the news I save each day without ever opening it, just because the headlines are interesting. Making this work from Madagascar was also about coming to terms with the possibility to think from another place. It was during my time there that women all over South Africa took to the streets in response to the brutal murder of 19-year-old UCT student Uyinene. I watched from a distance and felt alone, unable to participate, grieving from afar, hyperconnected, and yet totally distant. I am reminded of this feeling as I sit here today with all of you. The difficulty with even trying to compile a list of how much we have to keep up with every day is just impossible. At what point do we figure out how to filter and distill what is important and what is necessary? The content does not stop coming. In response to that, because this video is actually kind of outdated by now, if we think about the anxieties of today. So in response to that, I've made a list of today's anxieties. And here goes. To waste time these days is a damn shame. Not when we could be maximizing every minute of these quarantine days with writing proposals for projects and funding applications, while baking Instagram-worthy cakes and building a 1,000-piece puzzle every second day, while also doing laundry and cleaning the house regularly, making sure that all the door handles are disinfected. In between trying to imagine how to teach online, having never done any courses online myself, while also making all those Ottolenghi-inspired meals in between testing out a range of new yoga apps that guarantee a stress-free lockdown if we just put our minds to it, right? New content available. It's business on top and cozy on the bottom. 21% off sales for 21 days. The 10 items you need to get you through lockdown. Easy broccoli for hard times. Is your home really bacteria-free? It's time to prioritize your health. Double points when you shop today. I'm sure most of you will find these headlines kind of familiar. At least that's what my inbox looks like. I view this kind of digital noise or digital dust that surrounds us and comes at us all the time, all day long, flooding our inboxes as a kind of monotonous and relentless one-sided conversation with the internet that feeds on and creates new forms of anxiety. Jenny Odell, in her book How to Do Nothing, writes that the attention economy relies on fear and anxiety, and its concomitant logic that disruption is more productive than the work of maintenance. This disruption is something we're all accustomed to. There's new content available. Shoshana Zuboff calls this the age of surveillance capitalism, which unfortunately is so much more severe and haunting than just regular capitalism. Surveillance capitalism, as defined by Zuboff, unilaterally claims human experience as free raw material for translation into behavioral data. Although some of these data are applied to product or service improvement, the rest are declared as proprietary behavioral surplus, fed into advanced manufacturing processes known as machine intelligence, and fabricated into prediction products that anticipate what you will do now, soon, and later. I used to see a billboard every day on my way to the gym. Behavioral banking is the future. Zuboff goes on to clarify some common confusions. Surveillance capitalism is not technology itself, but a logic that imbues technology and commands it into action. It is a market form that is unimaginable outside the digital milieu, but it is not the same as the digital. She then also starts to focus on, and I've yet to read all of this in detail, but thinking about how surveillance capitalism migrates from the online to the real world, or the physical one, which she calls a consequence of the competition for prediction products that approximate certainty. To go back to Odell, who's thinking about how to reclaim our attention in the age of surveillance capitalism, she suggests that we try to reclaim our attention from the technologies that sap it. She suggests that we should take a protective stance towards ourselves, each other, and whatever is left of what makes us human, including the alliances that sustain and surprise us. She suggests that we protect our spaces and our time for non-instrumental, non-commercial activity and thought, for maintenance, for care, for conviviality. And she further suggests that we fiercely protect our human animality against all technologies that actively ignore and disdain the body, the bodies of other beings, and the body of the landscape that we inhabit. This last point that Odell makes is for me especially relevant as we sit in our respective spaces today, each wrecked with the myriad difficult decisions that we will need to make in the coming weeks about how we want and need to work and live and breathe and share space together or apart. Lastly, I want to add some thoughts on ideas of surveillance and securitization. That comes from the ideas of surveillance capitalism. Surveillance is not just the work of security companies and the police anymore. Surveillance is run by us and our communities. Our WhatsApp community groups are filled with sometimes sugar-coated and sometimes outright racism and prejudice. But most importantly, we have all become surveillance systems, little cogs, watching and reporting on the two guys in hoodies walking in the park, or the guy walking down the street looking at houses while he walks. How long before we start living in the predictive policing world of Minority Report? How soon before the prediction, even a fragment of predetermined evidence, becomes fact? How soon before the dust in the machine becomes a glitch and an alibi? Does any of this sound familiar? How do we think from another place? In the brief for this presentation, that was one of the questions. And in particular, I think that this video that was playing, which is now done, presents a kind of thinking about the overload and the exhaustion that comes with living in an age of surveillance capitalism. In addition to this, and I feel almost paradoxically, is the constant blockage and virtual barriers and the language of these that come at us all the time. Your password is incorrect, this content is not available at your current location, this image violates privacy standards. If the new or post-normal requires us to work remotely and from a distance, how do we think or rethink locality and access to information beyond our immediate spheres?